great to theorise and to look about the future, but why don't people act? Why don't they actually act towards making the better future? And that's something I'm sort of going on that journey myself now. It's not about trying to work out what the future is going to be, but actually living in the present and creating the future by living the future you want you and your family to be. So that's sort of where I've got to, and what I really have sort of continued on, I suppose, with my foresight journey.
So again, like some of those things up there, evolution of ideas and respect for cross-disciplines. So we're questioning across multiple disciplines. Thank you. And personally, I kept it through my career. I realised that my intuition is very important, and I'm in the hard sciences and business, and that has a lot. There's a lot to be gained on that, and to be included.
Do you mind if I put this up towards the future? Sorry. Bob.
I did my Masters in Entrepreneurship, and for my honours I discovered the foresight thing as an elective, and I felt I came to the conclusion after it that it was quite an interesting bunch of people, and so what I put up about the context of foresight was I'm very furiously curious about things, so that sort of. And I put up Noel Pearson's The PM in 2015.
Brian.
Yes, well, I used to work for the Albury-Wodonga Development Corporation. I had just finished writing a report, which I now realise was actually an embryonic futures report about the organisation. Having done that, reviewed it on a Saturday morning, I picked up the Age, and lo and behold, there was the ad for the Strategic Foresight program. And whilst Richard thought that I more than likely wouldn't make it because I was an engineer, I did do the course and became acquainted with Richard's views on dystopia, but being, I think, a natural optimist, I thought, don't worry about that, because things will change into the future, which will create the necessary wherewithal within us all to be able to handle the problems that we're going to face. Now, I don't know whether it's the weather or what, but there's been an underlying pessimism which has been clouding that for a while. And I've got two items here. One which goes back to, say, the beginning of this decade, and that's the less tolerant nation. That's, I believe that we can see that in our approach, or the official approach that was taken towards Aborigines, the approach towards the boat people. The thing that really disgusted me at the time, the Cronulla riots, all were symptoms of a nation which is becoming less and less tolerant. And that's concerned me for quite some time. And I've got another one here which follows on from that and is really underscored by the current election campaign. And this is now around about 2010 we're talking about. And what I'm saying there, it's the rise of spin and the fact that there's a wall between our political masters and the reality on the ground, the rise of spin and the death of vision, which really troubles me. So I have real problems with that optimism I have, which I thought we will be able to overcome the dystopia. I think we're going backwards at the moment, and that troubles me.
Thanks, Brian. Gareth.
So I've gone for Captain Cook. So on a personal level, if Captain Cook hadn't planted his flag and told the French that, look, I've got my British flag here, it wouldn't have set off, and the French hadn't gone away, it wouldn't have set off the British invasion of the Australian continent. which would have meant it was probably be a mixture of French and Dutch. And that would have made it a lot more difficult for me to emigrate here in 2001 and actually come on the Foresight course.
Yeah.
More generally, it represents exploration, going out into the unknown, and all the good and bad things that can come from that.
Thanks for that.
Well, I saw you all sitting there so comfortably because you knew I didn't have your names.
Confident or complacent? I'm not sure how I stumbled to Swinburne, but there are a number of people that entered my spheres, and eventually I found myself in the course. In terms of something galvanising, I spent 5 years of my life living in Europe, and when I was 7 years old, and I grew up in it was a different environment when I came back to Australia in 1981. We left when Thatcher came into power. So I didn't notice how much I'd realised around the Falklands War until I got back to Australia and we had Gulf War 1.0. The Falklands was a very weird experience, and it also made me reflect on Northern Ireland and the situation there when I was living in the UK, because I was completely alien to me. And I think what the reason I've just written war, and particularly those two, is because it just keeps happening. And the other thing that came out of that for me, I don't know whether to write hope, serendipity, communication. I put it down to language. I think that there's something around language that is still to be explored in the future.
You want it up there?
Yeah. And I'm reading a book at the moment. I'm glad Joe's not here because I shouldn't be reading this book. It's a slight matter of a thesis. It's called Globish, which is the rise of English as a global language, which keeps popping up, and it's interesting. So I think language is maybe something that's linked to war. I'm not sure.
Thanks, Rick.
Elizabeth.
Mine just says where it's going, and I think that's a couple of things. It's recognition of curiosity about where things are going, but also being in a position to influence decisions about where things go and how things develop.
Thank you.
I came to the course because I think I was working in sustainability policy at the time and getting increasingly frustrated by lack of movement. And a number of people emailed this course to me completely independently, which I sort of, started to learn to listen to these things. When I kind of first read something, I think the first thing I read out of the knowledge base was a paper, I can't remember who it was by, but it was about what's developed through Western cultures in scientific reductionism and technology and things, and the potential of combining that with Eastern philosophy and ideas of connectedness and stuff like that. And I just had a light bulb moment of, hang on, actually maybe we're going somewhere, maybe there's bigger, longer patterns that are playing out here that we can't see how they're all unfolding necessarily. So to get, not that I get any less frustrated by the small changes, but to also kind of see those as part of the pattern that I don't control. So for me it was a kind of a big thing. The whole course really has been about hope in seeing those bigger patterns and then acting because you feel that those bigger patterns are happening, and it's okay if your small immediate actions don't actually play out how you thought they would, to just trust they're part of something bigger. It's probably out towards the future, I reckon, because I've got no idea where it's going, but
I worked in, I'm a farmer, I worked in the Golden Valley in a leadership program, and the man employed me because he said we need to bring about change. And when I took up the position, I found at the end of that year that he didn't want change at all, he only thought he wanted change. And he was seriously threatened by change, and I was absolutely devastated that he hadn't seen that the role that I could play was something that was constructive for this program. And at that stage I banged into a young man in the street whom I'd only met previously once before, and he said, oh, Kathy said, I know this wonderful program, you might be interested. It was actually for foresight. So, being a Gemini, I don't have one, I have several, because we need to spread our thoughts around.
We'll just have one first, and I'm going to get all the others up later.
All right. Well, there's an awareness of people being bogged.
Bogged, yeah.
Sorry. The next one seems to follow on from that.
Oh, sorry. I'll let you have soothing.
What's it say? Oh, and that there is a process for creating future.
Thank you.
Tiffany. I have two linked concepts. One is the concept of foresight as a science, not oracles. So a method, I think that goes back there somewhere. And the other is I grew up reading science fiction. But the thing about science fiction was there's foresight, there's things, but there's not so much of that method in it. And so it's a revelation about, ooh, we can do this. The inspiration, the thing of science fiction is the method. Yeah. We can reproduce. Right. Peter.
I don't think it's going to change in a hurry. Okay, most two are down here. First off, a frustration with silo mentalities. So people, local minds in a big world, and the inability to see what other people are doing and how that's actually influential in their own field. And the thing that I personally got out of doing the foresight thing was just being in a room of like-minded people, knowing that you're not the only fruitcake on the planet. So that's personal, so I'm going to stick that one. It would definitely have been 2007 that I figured that one out. But this one goes back, way back here. I mean, it ties in with the limits to growth and all the other stuff.
Thank you.
Adam.
I started in 2009. I fell in love with an Australian girl back in 2006, so I had to move down here. And moved down in 2007 and left all my friends, all my family back in Europe. I'm from Sweden. And looked for a new network, I guess, new people to collaborate with. And looked for a couple of years and finally found the Foresight program through Richard Haynes, a lecture with Richard Haynes. So network and collaboration for me.
In some ways, I grew up in Melbourne but have lived in elsewhere, mainly in Sydney, for 25 years. So, and the connection, I think, as Adam was saying, I think it's very important, re-establishing a network and a network of peers, and people who think differently but deeply, maybe differently from me, differently from others, but deeply about big issues. And speaking about big issues, I'll just do two linear, standard historical things. 1,000 years of Anglo-European academic heritage, which obviously, as part of a university structure, we're embedded in, and owe a lot of, gratitude and honour toward, with the whole course and us wouldn't be here. But also John Batman establishing Melbourne in 1835. It may have displaced another fantastic, wonderful people, but we're also fantastic and wonderful, and hopefully we can both come together and live properly and constructively